right, good afternoon. We'll call to order the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals regular meeting for February 22nd, 2017. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of the minutes for the regular meeting from January 25th, 2017. Those minutes were provided to the members. Are there any changes to those minutes?
Not for me.
If not, those will stand as approved, and we'll move on to new business. Our first application, a special use permit and variance request, application Z17008 by Matthew Woodle, representing Verizon Wireless, and Christy Bryan of MFH Partners, requesting a special use permit for a telephone or telegraph facility. Pursuant to Section 8 and Chart 1 of the Murfreesboro Zoning Ordinance, for installation of a new cellular equipment onto a parking lot light pole. They're also requesting a variance from Section 18G4 of the zoning ordinance, requiring light poles not exceed a height of 20 feet for building height less than 35 feet to allow the replacement pole to be 36.4 feet. This is for property in the Commercial Highway District located at 145 Innsbrook Boulevard. Mr. Lewis, if you'd review that one for us.
Sure, Chairman Young. The applicant, Mr. Matthew Woodle, is representing Verizon Wireless, and he's requesting a special use permit from the zoning ordinance for a telephone or telegraph facility to be installed to install a small cell antenna system at 145 Innsbrook Boulevard. The existing light pole, which is 32.2 feet in height, is located in the parking lot of the Murfreesboro Funeral Home. You can see that on the aerial photograph in front of you, which is in approximately 60 feet from the Innsbrook Boulevard right-of-way. The applicant wishes to replace the attached cellular equipment to attach it to a new pole at a height of 36.4 feet and include the following equipment: an antenna canister, which is approximately 30 inches in length, to be installed at the top of the pole. The lighting fixture, which is proposes to utilize the existing fixture or replace with a similar design to match the on-site fixtures. Radio equipment, which consists of two cabinets, which will be installed at the exterior of the pole, on the exterior of the pole, approximately 10 feet and 15 feet above the base, which is approximately 28 inches by 30 inches by 20 inches in size, and a fiber cabling which will be located within the light pole structure. In addition, the applicant is requesting a 16.4 foot variance from the Section 18G4, which requires on-site light fixtures not exceed 20 feet where a non-residential structure height is 35 feet or less in height. The Murfreesboro Funeral Home is less than 35 feet in height. However, the height of the existing pole and the other poles in the parking lot, they're 32.2 feet. And the applicant wishes to replace the light pole to match the existing fixtures and install the antenna cap to the top of the pole for a total height of 36.4 feet. City Code Section 8, Chart 1 allows in the CH district telephone or telegraph facility in the CH zone with approval of a special use permit from the Board of Zoning Appeals. As shown in the attached exhibits, the proposed cellular equipment is a stealth design where the antenna will be a compact canister design, and the equipment boxes attached directly onto the pole. As noted in the attached applicant's correspondence, which is dated February 2 this year, he states that the pole height is needed to maintain the lighting fixture at the current height, matching the other on-site light poles, and to accommodate the antenna canister. As designed, the proposed use in the structure will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon the adjacent properties, the character of the neighborhood, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, and welfare of the general public. And the proposed height is necessary to match the on-site existing light fixtures to accommodate the cellular equipment. The applicant is in attendance at the meeting, and I'll be able to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any questions for staff at this point?
Yeah, I have one. If the code's called for 20 foot, how did we get to 32 feet on this property?
That was built before, it was built, I think, in 1980. So it was, I think it predates the zoning ordinance, but they were all built according to the standards then, so that's more or less grandfathered in.
All right, so they didn't need a variance or
Right.
get a variance at that point in time.
Right.
Okay.
Anything you'd like to add, the applicants like to add to the application? No. Any questions for the applicant?
I have one. Just this is more of a curiosity question. So, this this product we'll call, or I'm calling it, what does it do? What does it accomplish? What is it? The same thing as a regular cell tower, or what will this do for Verizon?
So the concept behind a small cell is to add capacity in a localized area. It typically will only put out signal up to about 1,000 feet. So Verizon is sensing that there's a capacity constraint occurring in that area. Instead of building a large tower that might interfere with the network in other areas or have to go through an unsightly type of build out, they can install these antennas on top of light posts, sometimes on top of rooftops, that type of thing, to add capacity in a localized area.
So there's a chance we might see more of these then, correct?
It is an industry trend to utilize small cells
Yeah.
for that purpose.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
I just got a phone call yesterday about the same thing in another part of town, so there'll be more coming.
Okay.
And I was talking to David Ives by email, and we're going to try to address this ahead of the curve and see if we can get these administratively done if they meet certain conditions, but we're still working on that.
Okay.
Any further questions for the applicant?
Maybe better than those big towers they have to put in.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application? If so, if you'd come up, state your name and address, and give us any comments you have. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the variance request.
I'll second the motion. I think it's less obtrusive, and I think it's going to be a good idea going further. I realize it's 4 feet higher than what is there now, but I think it's 4 feet is a good compromise over what it could be. So I'll second that motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That application has been approved. Next, we'll move to variance request. Application Z17009 by Harold Quakenbush, representing Ascend Federal Credit Union, requesting a 7-foot variance from Chart 2 of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, requiring a 42-foot front setback to allow the building no closer than 35 feet from South Rutherford Boulevard right-of-way. And this is located at 2316 East Main Street.
They didn't do that, Brenda? Okay. I was just notified by Brenda that I think we considered a special use permit for the first item. I don't know if you voted on
We
that.
did a second item for the variance portion of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, one was a variance and then one was a special use permit.
Okay.
And we can do that either now after this next one, or you can do it now, or
Want to go ahead and get it cleaned up? Get it cleaned up now. So the motion that we made, we want to make that for the special use permit? Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 16.4 foot variance.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the variance portion of the application. Is that serving your purpose?
is that both of them? Yeah. Okay.
All right, any further discussion on that section? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay.
Now I think we got that one cleaned up.
Okay, application Z17009 The applicant, Mr. Harold Quackenbush, represents Ascend Federal Credit Union, which is located at 2316 East Main Street. He's requesting a 7-foot variance from the zoning ordinance, Chart 2, which requires a 42-foot front setback to allow the building to be no closer than 35 feet from South Rutherford Boulevard right-of-way. The property is currently under construction for a new banking facility and has frontage on East Main Street and Dill Lane as well. The parcel is approximately 2.2 acres in size, with primary access from East Main Street and the secondary access from Dill Lane. The section of the new building is 120 linear feet that will be encroaching encroaching 7 feet into the setback along South Rutherford Boulevard. Let me pull this up a little bit closer on the screen here. You can see a little closer. This is the area we're talking about. Since the initial site plan approval and start of construction, the owner purchased the adjoining private property, which Nesbitt Drive. The property consists of several existing parcels, and they will be combined into a single lot of record prior to a C of O by a re-subdivision plat, which was previously approved by the Planning Commission. Upon completion of the plat, the property will then have frontage on South Rutherford Boulevard as well as Dill Lane and East Main Street, thus requiring it to be treated as a front yard setback. It also fronts on East Main and Dill Lane. The building will be set back for each of the streets. The property is zoned CL. The building design was approved by the Planning Commission, and the BZA granted a front setback variance on November 20th, 2014, to allow 9 feet from East Main Street. Subsequently, the owner acquired the adjoining property, which is Nesbitt Drive, which was considered a side yard with a setback requirement of 10 feet. Once the resubplat is completed, the combining Nesbitt Drive parcels into the subject property, the property line along South Rutherford Boulevard will then be considered a front setback of 42 feet. Although the building site remains the same as approved, by combining the lot, setbacks as defined by the zoning ordinance has changed. The construction of the building is nearly complete, and it would be a hardship and impractical to move the building. In addition to having 3 front street frontages is unusual, and the limits of the area can be developed. The applicant is in the audience, and I'll be available to answer any questions as well, if you have any.
Any questions for Mr. Lewis?
So this is coming before us just because of the fact that they now acquired portion or all of Nesbitt Drive?
Right.
Looks to me that so where's the setback being measured from?
It'll be measured from the property line of the old Nesbitt Drive.
Okay.
Which would be the
so Nesbitt's been abandoned,
and the property line. Nesbitt Drive will go away where the property is, where Ascend property is, and the property line will begin at Rutherford Boulevard, which is a little strip. That's a little strip of the land which Nesbitt Drive is.
Mr. Halliburton, I reviewed this site plan, and planning director asked me to be present to help explain to you. Really what it's doing is, because they've acquired that additional property, the city of Murfreesboro has changed that property line classification from a side to a front. And because we've changed it from a side to front, that increased the setback. So the plan isn't changing, the building location isn't changing, it's just the fact that when they've acquired that additional right-of-way, it went from being called a side to a front.
So it was a side when Nesbitt Drive was there, but it's a front now since Nesbitt Drive is not there.
That's the only change.
Okay. Because I was like, it can't be any further distance from the road than what it was originally, so why are we looking at it now? But I get it. Okay.
Just a reclassification.
So there wasn't a variance needed for that side setback?
There was not when it was considered a side.
Right,
Because
okay.
the side setback is
Okay.
10 feet and the front is 42 feet.
Is that Nesbitt just going to be used for ingress and egress, or?
It's been used as a private drive for 3 property owners, and really it doesn't have much use.
Okay.
Will this enable them to have another curb cut there on South Rutherford, though?
No, it will not.
Okay.
So is it just the southeast corner?
So it's all
Or
of
the
the eastern
entire-
side, the eastern side.
Okay. Because Nesbitt Drive didn't go all the way to the corner, did it?
Nesbitt Drive does go to the right-of-way corner. It doesn't go to the physical street corner, but it does go to the right-of-way corner.
Okay.
Further questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything the applicants would like to add to the application? Okay, at this time, we'll conduct the public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? If you'd come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
If there's no further discussion, I move to approve the application.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That application has been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z17010 by Eric and Kelly Felker on behalf of Charles Leonard and Janie Atkinson, the property owners, requesting a 4-foot variance from Section 25E1A of the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance, requiring a minimum setback of 5 feet from side and rear lot lines for detached accessory structures. This request is for a side yard setback of 1 foot for the existing garage, and this is for property located in a single-family residential RS-15 district at 710 Regal Drive. Mr. Lewis, if you'd review that for us.
Yes, sir. The applicants Eric and Kelly Felker, on behalf of the property owner Charles Leonard and Janie Atkinson, is requesting a variance of 4 feet to allow a 1 foot setback from the side yard of it for an existing detached garage located at 710 Regal Drive. The subject property measures 110 feet by 195 feet and lies in an RS-15 zoning district. The property includes an existing 2-story residence and a garage 30 feet wide by 30 feet deep. The garage is located in the rear portion of the property, 1.8 feet from the side property line, 23.2 feet from the rear property line, and 41.6 feet behind the primary residence, as shown in your attachment. As noted in the applicant's letter, they entered into an agreement with their neighbors, Charles Leonard and Janie Atkinson, to slightly shift the property line between the two residences in order to straighten out an existing line that was created at a slant. At the time the survey was completed to replot the property lines, it was discovered that the garage on the subject property was constructed 1.8 feet from the property line. In the zoning ordinance for interior lots in residential districts, detached accessory structures and uses except for fences and hedges shall be located not less than 60 feet from the front lot line, and in no event shall be closer to than the front lot line than 10 feet behind the front of the principal structure, and not less than 5 feet from any side and rear lot lines. In the applicant's attached letter, he states that the following reasons for the requested variance. Number one is some of the initial property lines for this section of Regal Drive appear to have been set at an angle that make it difficult to stay within the prescribed setback limits in relation to the way the structures are positioned within the properties themselves. The detached garage at Regal Drive was placed where it was in relation to the driveway there. The angle of the driveway, as it was positioned against the property line, causes a narrowing of the distance between the two and causes the side setback to be out of compliance. Parcel lines are irregular because the placement of the existing structures are parallel to the street, but the property lines were created with a slight angle causing slightly irregular parcel shapes. The irregular shape makes it difficult for the structures to line up with the street, driveway, and the house without compromising the setback limit. The garage was constructed in 2000 and was not noted at that time that it was not compliant with the required setbacks. Due to the unusual alignment of the property line, the garage was constructed too close to the property line, and they feel it would be a hardship and not practical to require relocating the garage to meet the side yard requirements. The applicant is in attendance at the meeting to answer any questions you may have, and I'll be able to as well.
Any questions for staff at this point?
What's the side yard setback?
Side yard setback for detached structures are 5 feet.
Okay, so that's, okay. The survey, I was looking at the survey, and it looked as though it was just delineating a side yard setback larger than that, so that's for the main structure. Is that correct?
Say that again, please.
It looked as though is there a different side setback for a main structure?
Yeah, for attached, if it's a house or something attached to the house, it would be 12.5 feet.
Okay. I let the survey confuse me.
But the property, I guess the condition is actually more adverse to lot 190 than it is to 188, right? And we're talking about this detached garage at the back of the property of lot 189 because there was a resurvey,
Right.
replatting of these two lots, or
If the applicant,
how did we
yeah.
get there? I mean,
The applicant may be able to explain this better than I could.
How this came about is when we mentioned in here about the redrawing the lot lines, actually I'm on the west side of the property, and where this is talking about is on the east side. Actually what's happening is the property line runs at an angle where part of my driveway actually is on their property, and we were looking to build a garage at 714. So we came into agreement with the residents at 710 to shift our property line a little bit so we would be in compliance on ours. So we were going to move 2 feet and straighten that line out. When they did the replat, they replatted both sides, not just the one that we're looking at, but the one on the east side. And that's when they said, well, we can't go any further until they get this straightened out with the one on the east side, which is within 5 feet. And like I say, it's been there for like 17 years. It's an existing structure. And I'm assuming that over there, the lines are, the way it's set, the driveway, it's sitting parallel. And I mean, they're already shifted over a little bit from where their driveway is. Evidently, their driveway is part on that property. So where they set it, it's already, out of compliance that way. So
you're lot 188?
Yes, I'm on the west side, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I was told that we couldn't go forward with moving those lines on my side until we get this straightened out on the east side. So,
okay.
And I'm just trying to be compliant when we can get ours moved so we can build our garage on our side, which we can't do that unless we get the line shifted on our side of the property there. So,
well, what about the people that own them? What about the people to the east of
189.
189, the house.
190?
It's no problem with them because there's a fence there they've already got up, and it's,
they're the ones would seem to me to be the worst affected.
But depending on when they bought it, if it's been up for 17 years, they may have bought it that way.
Right.
That's speculation on my part, but.
Worst position anyway. Okay.
Did
I
you say
talked to
you've
the property
already
owner.
discussed this with your neighbor and got all
Yes,
that?
we had come to an agreement to shift our property line on my side to where my property wouldn't be on his, or my driveway wouldn't be on his property, and to straighten it out because it runs at an angle, and our driveway goes straight. It actually cuts across the end of my driveway, so we're going to shift it to where it'll be straight. And then that's when they did the replat. Then they replatted both sides, and then they found that the east side, which is opposite of me, is the one that's within the 5-foot setback slightly.
So you're taking on the task of the BZA approval for your neighbor's lot then?
Yes.
This is working. Okay.
And I did talk to the the lady at 190, the lot 190, and she explained that she was okay with this. She wasn't concerned, other than they weren't
Okay.
introducing a new zone to the neighborhood.
Did she make mention that the driveway maybe on 189 was on her, isn't that what you just said earlier, that the driveway on 189 might be in 190's lot, or no, or did I misunderstand?
I'm 188.
I know that, but did you say that the driveway for 189 might be in the lot on 190?
I don't think it is. I think
Okay,
it's-
I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
That's what I thought he said.
I think he did, but
Yeah.
Well, I think that my point is, what I'm trying to say is the way the driveways are all set, it's close enough to where, when they put that garage there, I guess, it's already over a little bit. I mean, there's a pretty good space if you look at it when in real
Right.
life. I guess in order to meet that, they would have to have been way over further, but apparently there wasn't anything said about them being within the 5 foot at that time when it was built. So, I mean,
The driveways are in the 5-foot setback too. His driveway is within that 5-foot setback, like, is that what you mean?
I don't know.
Looks like it is.
Your driveway would have been prior to this resurvey.
Yes. When we were trying to get the lines and all, when they came out and surveyed, it actually, a slight portion of my driveway was on their property, so we talked with them and decided we would shift it, a little bit in the front would come over my way, and the back would come over their way, so it would straighten out.
That
So
way
we-
neither
we-
person loses any actual property.
Right, yeah, we kind of traded a little bit to straighten out the line there, so.
Thank you.
So as far as you know, with respects to this replatting and this application, the person who owns 190 is not going to be negatively affected. I realize that she's already said she's okay with it, but I'm getting at if 189's driveway is in 190's lot, it seems like to me we ought to be addressing that at the same time. But if that's not the case, it's not the case.
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't speak to that side of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The driveway can be in a setback, but the structure is what
let me-
threw the flag up.
They didn't,
But I would think people as owners.
this was replatted.
Yeah.
Your neighbor's lot was replatted.
Well, it's in
Did
the
they
process.
survey all the points? Or was it just that one line that was?
No, it was the whole thing, the whole lot.
And so
Even though-
you probably wasn't privy to the survey that should have shown where the driveway was
Right.
on lot 189,
Yeah.
whether it was an encroachment or not. You would know that if you had.
Right.
It looks like
The driveways can be in the setback, correct? It's the structures.
Then that's not on
You wouldn't want them over the property line, which is what they're trying to address.
Yeah, but that's a property issue, not a setback issue.
No, that's an encroachment issue, yeah.
Or, yeah,
If
for,
I'm-
Other neighbor, right,
yeah, for us, it's just, would be the
right,
setback.
right.
I'm looking at it here, I don't see that it's on the property line according to what I'm looking at, but
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you have the same thing or
We're
not.
trying to dig something else up here that's not part of this application, so. And I apologize for that because I'm the one that was leading that bandwagon.
Any other questions for the applicant?
None.
Like anything additional you'd like to add? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? If so, come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
If no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That application's been approved. Next, we'll move to application Z17011 by Oaks Retail Partners, requesting 4 variances for the development and construction of the final phase of the Oaks Shopping Center for the Homegoods building and end-cap tenant spaces on property zone light industrial that's also within the Gateway Design Overlay, GDO 1. This is located at the southeast corner of Medical Center Parkway and Joe Knight Drive. There are 4 components to this. The first is a variance from Appendix A, Chart 2 of the zoning ordinance to allow 0 feet from the required 20 feet from the rear yard setback and 0 from the 10 feet side yard setback for the property line adjacent to Steinmart. Section 2 is a variance from Section 24 of the GDO E4B4 of the zoning ordinance to allow 0 feet from the required 15 feet between the parking lot and adjacent property between the southern and western property boundaries. Section 3 is a variance from Section 24 of the GDO F337 of the zoning ordinance to allow a 2-foot variance from the required 5-foot minimum width landscape strip. And the fourth is a variance from Section 24 of the GDO E4B3 to allow 0 feet from the required 10 feet distance between buildings and parking or access drives. Mr. Lewis, if you'd review that one for us.
Okay. The subject property, like you mentioned, is located at the southeast corner of Medical Center Parkway and Joe Knight Drive. The base zoning of the property in question is zoned light industrial, LI, with an overlay zoning of Gateway Design Overlay, GDO 1 district. The applicant has submitted a site plan for the development for the final phase of the Oaks Shopping Center that will be facing Medical Center Parkway. The plan as shown in the attached drawings consists of one large tenant space of 22,000 square feet, which will be called Homegoods, that will be located adjacent to the Steinmart building, clothing store, and an end cap of multiple tenant spaces, which will total 15,240 square feet, that will be facing Medical Center Parkway. The applicant is requesting 4 variances from the zoning ordinance in order for the development to fit into the remaining vacant space at the northern end of the Oak Shopping Center. Now, the variance 1, which we're going to talk about, is from the zoning ordinance Appendix A, Chart 2, minimum lot requirements, minimum yard requirements, and land intensity ratios that requires 10-foot setback in the LI zoning district. According to the applicant, due to the financing structure of the development, a portion of Phase 2 of the project has been subdivided, which is Lot 2 and Lot 2B, was shown in the attachments. The new property line runs between the Steinmart building and the proposed Homegoods building. This request is to allow 0 feet from the required 20 feet rear setback on the Homegoods lot, which is Lot 2B, for the property adjacent to the Steinmart building, and 0 from the required 10 feet side yard setback, 10 feet side yard setback on the Steinmart side, or Lot 2, for the property adjacent to the Steinmart building. And remember that we're talking about 2 separate lots, Lot 2 and Lot 2B. The Steinmart building is located on Lot 2, while Homegoods is going to be located on Lot 2B. The applicants are in the audience, and I know this is a confusing 4 set of requests, but we'll try to have him come up and explain his requests, and I think we'll be able to get through this. If you have any questions for me or the applicant, we'll be able to answer them. And we'll start with variance number 1.
All right, any questions for staff at this point? How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Just fine. Anything you'd like to add to the application?
Just a few points. This project actually was started in 2003.
Sorry, can I catch your name?
Gary Parks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sorry about that.
This project actually was started in 2003, and the project that we are ending up with is very, very similar to what we started with in 2003. When we started this project, there was no Gateway Design overlay zoning or any gateway design district. So we built the first phase of the project before the GDO regulations were promulgated and that overlay zoning went down. And I think we actually built part of phase 2 before that went down. And then this particular piece of the project was brought back, I believe, in 2008. And we received approval with a package of variances to do this project. But due to the financial climate of 2008, we were never able to get it off the ground. From a variance request standpoint, these property lines have been added because the lender for the Lot 2B, we secured a permanent loan several months ago to wrap all of the existing construction, and so the construction loan that we have for Lot 2B to do the construction will be a different lender, so we've had to isolate that piece of the project. So we've introduced some property lines, which of course you can't see when you go out there and look at it. It looks like a contiguous shopping center, and this is very similar to what we did when we split phase 2 from phase 1. As you can see on the drawing, there's a property line between Sports Seasons and Steinmart, and we went through a very similar set of requests.
Thank you. So if this was being developed as one piece, and this one lot wasn't involved here, I guess it would alleviate all of these, or?
Well, these particular setback variances, yes.
Okay. All right, anything further for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
And I'm here again for this project, which I reviewed with the Planning Commission. This is, Mr. Halliburton may recall, we discussed it last month. And when I want to say we, Staff and Planning Commission determined that these variances seem very reasonable because they're a result of the property line being there where they weren't there before. And they have to do either with the setback requirements or the gateway has standards that require separation between parking and adjacent property lines. And you can see like VR2 example, the property line goes right through a drive aisle, and so you can't have the 15 feet on either side because the drive aisle is existing. And then there's the Homegoods is located right along the Steinmart, and so that would be a setback separation as well. Mm-hmm. They're, sorry, 8.5 months pregnant and out of breath, so I usually do a better job than this. Actually, I'm 9 months now, but and so the Planning Commission received these very favorably, and I wanted to pass it along to you, Mr. Halliburton could. The only additional variance that was added was, and this is not because of the property lines, but it's identified as VR3, and I don't know if Mr. Lewis can pull that up. It's for the foundation plantings. You're required to have 5-foot foundation plantings along the base of a building, and they're requesting a variance to do less than that, which isn't a result of the property lines. When it was considered at Planning Commission staff didn't see that as a non-self-created hardship. The others, they all supported and believed would help this development develop as had been originally anticipated in 2006, but the foundation plantings was something additional that the applicants were advised that Planning Commission wasn't for it and staff wasn't for it, but they wanted to come to you anyway and ask for that. So that one I wanted to clarify is a little different because it doesn't have any reflection to the property lines.
Okay.
Is there a safety reason for the traffic flow in the backside of that building that would be the reason for that variance request? Like, is there?
They could shrink maybe the building 2 feet and be able to have 5 feet instead of 3 feet, or I think they're asking for a 2-foot variance. Is that right, Mr. Lewis?
For the
foundation plantings?
Yes.
So they could do 2 feet less of
have
building
a
if they
smaller building.
wanted, if you wanted. But the drive aisle, it needs to be.
Does have to be there, right?
I just want to say that we were just starting with the variance number 1.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to
we'll
point
get
out,
into those.
Just in the
2,
gateway
3,
goes
and
to Planning
4.
Commission first, and so that's a little unusual for your BZA applications, and so that's why I wanted to come up and talk to you about these.
We'll ask you to come back to the podium when we get to those. We were just looking
Many
at
times.
the first variance. Many times.
I'll stay right here.
Sit closer.
Roll up a chair.
Yeah, right.
We got a portable mic somewhere around here.
Yeah. You don't have to get up. We certainly don't want a BZA board here.
That would be a first.
Not yours anyway.
I didn't want that.
I guess they'll still, yeah.
TV.
Take an emergency break. The BZA babies.
But we do cross-access easements.
They have shown an intent to have one.
Well, then we should make it a contingency. The only recommendation, what we're talking about, is when there's commercial properties that have a demising line like this, where the property lines are separated, what I've done in the past is I would have cross-access easements for utility features, life safety issues, and things like that, fire-rated walls, which I'm sure they're designing anyway, because in theory, these properties could end up in different owners at different periods of time. And so if you do a cross-access easement, which the city would be a beneficiary of, then that would assure that things like fire stanchions are maintained in the right order and everything else, just in case, 10 years down the line, you have separate property owners that aren't maintaining it. I would make that, a contingency to the variance. We'll draft it and get it up to them, and then the variance would go into effect. So we did it on a contingency basis. I think that would work.
Would we need to make that a contingency to each request, or
No,
only
well,
the first variance?
Probably.
Some of them are setbacks for property lines. It's really concerned setback from where the demising line is on the building, where the buildings come together.
Just that Steinmart side.
Just the Steinmart, it looks like that's where the property line is, yeah.
Yeah, just this one right here.
Right.
And the applicants indicated that they do have those easements in place and that they could amend them to have the city be a beneficiary, which is what I believe
Okay.
you were asking for.
Right. That way we can, if we see it, we don't have to rely on the property owners to
Right.
enforce it. We'll enforce it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, got what you needed?
Yep.
Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Please come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for discussion or a motion. They said we were attacking number 1, which is the rear yard setback
Side setback.
and the 10-foot side. Is 2 of those in one?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve variance 1 with the contingency of the cross easement and the beneficiary to the city.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that piece has been approved. Okay, on section 2, did you want to?
Yeah, sure.
some more-
Variance number 2 is from section 24 of the Gateway Design Overlay District, GDO E4B4, that requires a 15 feet of distance between the parking lot and the adjacent property between the southern and western property boundaries of Lot 2B and a portion of the northern and eastern property boundaries of Lot 2. The southern and western boundary lines established by Lot 2B run through the existing parking lot and drive aisles as shown in the attachment EX in your materials, EX1. The applicant is requesting the distance between portions of the southern and western parking lot boundaries, as well as the northern and eastern parking lot boundaries adjacent to Lot 2, be reduced to 0 feet. And then, let's see if I can pull this up on the screen that we can see where I'm circling right in here, where you come in off of Medical Center Parkway. This property line here is where we're talking about.
Okay.
Property line.
I know I had a new variance 2 here in the variance 2 there as well. That piece between those two.
And then there's another little area on the,
Essentially, that property line is right midpoint of the access.
Drive aisle, yeah, the drive aisles, yeah.
Yeah.
So this variance is basically regarding the street and, is those 3 points are where you'd have cars.
Right, they'll be coming in off here. There's the point here, and there's actually another one up in here on this, behind the Steinmart building. It doesn't show up on there. Okay.
But the parking lot in question, though, is the one fronting Medical Center Parkway, right? On Lot 2B?
Right. In front of the end cap shop.
And so that parking lot, that distance from where that parking lot's proposed to the boundary line, is that, I mean,
Well, Miss Green she's the expert in GDOs, so she can probably explain this in her sleep.
Sure. Where there is a property line in the gateway, a property this size needs to have 15 feet of green space area.
oh, green
It can't be used
space?
for parking, it can't be used for access, it can't be used for anything, so there's 15 feet of just green. And because of the development type here and the property lines that can't have that 15-foot separation, the southern example of VR2 is because it's going through the drive aisle. The drive aisle is existing, and we don't see a benefit to having that relocated. And then that's true in the other locations. So it's 15 feet of green space between a property line and the parking and access.
We have drive aisles, so that's something that's already existing, and with the property line as it was created, it created a problem. I think that's correct, right?
The property line, if the property line weren't there, there would be no need for that one. That's right.
Right.
But when we say Lot 2B, we're not just speaking of because it's just a little, the Lot 2B is not only the parking lot that's facing Medical Center Parkway, but it's also the end shops and the Homegoods all encompassed.
Right, that's all Lot 2B.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
You want to pass that to him? I think I had to do this so I can understand it. A little bit clearer.
I'll draw it this way.
Do what now?
Or it's upside down to me.
Yeah.
When they created Lot 2B, they created the property lines, which is causing all these problems.
Right.
And Medical Center Parkway is technically north, so if you wanted to orient it, you would have to put Med Center at the top, and so it would be like this. When north isn't oriented, it confuses everybody.
Okay. All right, I don't assume we need another public hearing since we had one for the main application. I don't see anybody that would comment on this section. Is there any further discussion for the section 2?
We need to have a public hearing since we had one.
We did, and we're doing separate motions. We should do a public hearing for a motion.
Okay,
Okay.
then we need to have 4 public hearings.
Okay. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak to section 2 of this application? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve variance number 2.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Okay, now we'll move to number 3.
Okay. Excuse me. Variance number 3 is from section 24 of the zoning ordinance Gateway Design Overlay District GDO F337 that requires a 5-foot minimum width landscaping strip planted with shrubs, trees, or other landscape materials or separated from buildings by a sidewalk. In 2006, the BZA granted a variance reducing the required distance from the building to the parking lot from 10 feet to a varied width with a minimum 4.5 feet at the narrowest point on the east side of the end-cap shop building. Since then, the current zoning ordinance was amended to add 5-foot minimum width. The applicant wishes to abide by the intentions of the amendment to the zoning ordinance by providing landscaping at the base of the building and still maintaining a sidewalk for safety purposes along the east side of the building. A 2-foot reduction in the 5-foot requirement is being requested that would ultimately end up as a 3-foot wide base of building planter and still allow for code compliant sidewalk. Additional landscape material to offset the 2-foot loss in the width of the landscape strip would be added between the parking lot and the property line to the east to provide additional screening from the adjacent lot, which is owned by Thor's Oak LLC, an affiliate of Parks Development Group. The applicant's here still, and we'll answer any question you may have.
Additional comments on the landscape portion?
I think that summed it up pretty well. When we designed this building several years ago, had it designed and ready to go, we had gone through the process, gotten the variances, and in between when we got all of those approved, and now a new piece was added to the ordinance for the 5-foot landscape strip, and we were using our old plans and only had so much distance between the drive aisle and the building. And so what we tried to do was meet the intent. We could make the entire space in there landscaping, but if we do that, we lose the sidewalk boundary. So we'd like to leave that sidewalk boundary in there and then take plantings that would have been in that 2-foot strip and move it into the buffer between the parking lot and the property line. And we also own, an affiliate of ours owns the lot next door, and we're fine with that. We'll be bringing a development plan in for that project here in the next couple of months.
What do you say to the staff's suggestion to make the building 2 feet smaller?
We could make the building 2 feet smaller. Unfortunately, it's already designed, but we could either make the building 2 feet smaller, we could shrink the building 2 feet, or we could make that entire, what's now the area between the building and the edge of sidewalk, all landscape. I don't think that's as from a safety standpoint, I would rather people who want to exit the building and maybe turn down the side and go to cars that are in those head-end stalls on the other side of the drive aisle have some distance to transfer on a sidewalk before they step off the curb. But we could handle that either way.
But what you're asking for correlates to what's already there, correct?
Sir?
What you're asking for correlates to what's already there, correct? Or no?
So I'm not sure I understand your question.
The remaining part of the development.
Yeah.
Are there other?
What you're planning to do is complementary to what's already there.
Absolutely.
No, well, I don't see another portion of this that has a sidewalk on the back side of the building.
There's your
Right.
monitor. There's a picture of the monitor, if we could pull that up.
I think the difference is because the orientation of this lot, they're facing Medical Center Parkway. That's actually a side property line. The other buildings, that's a rear. We don't require those on a rear. We require them on the fronts and sides.
Okay.
So because you have end shops actually facing Med Center, the fronts and sides have foundation plantings, and you do have them throughout the development. They've utilized some different ways, containers and things to put them in. And how they're put in, of course, Planning Commission will review, and they don't have to be in front of entrances and things like that. So we have some flexibility there. But because this is facing Med Center Parkway, that's a side, not a rear.
Okay.
There'll be more landscaping in this area than there is in the remainder of the Oaks development anyways, right?
That probably won't be true with the new development that's actually facing Med Center.
I'm saying what's there now. In comparison to what's there now.
Maybe, I don't know that that's actually...
I think it'll be consistent. I think the main difference you'll have is the buffer that's actually in front of the property at Medical Center Parkway. We actually had a variance on that piece when we came in the last time Because if you look at the curb line running down Medical Center Parkway, that curb line was put in before there was a GDO ordinance. And so when we came in 2008, it was approved that we could keep that same curb line instead of offsetting it. When we came back to do our design for this project right now, we discovered that due to some changes also in the stormwater code, we needed some more additional area to get water treatment. And so we cut the size of the front parking lot down to achieve the water treatment. So even though we have a variance to push that curb all the way to closer to Medical Center Parkway, we actually went the other way. So you'll have more green space in front of the lot than what we've got typically.
So that's a 25-foot requirement along arterials of green space in front of the building, and so they could reduce that down to about 12 feet. They had gotten 4 or 5 variances back in 2007. Those still apply to the property now, and so they could reduce that if they needed to, but they want to use it for stormwater management, so it sounds like they're not going to.
And the number of parking spaces for that particular area will be in compliance for the number of square footage, for the square footage of the units that are being proposed?
Yep, will be. And then they also have some shared parking agreement with
Right.
the remainder of the property, but it has to stand on its own. This,
Yes.
this parcel has to meet its standards on its own.
Thank you, guys. At this time, we'll conduct a public hearing on the landscape variance. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the variance for the Section 24 Gateway Design Overlay.
Second.
Have a motion and a second for the landscape variance. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that piece has been approved. Let you tackle number 4.
Okay, the last variance request is from Section 24, the Gateway Design Overlay District, GDO E4B3, that requires a minimum space between buildings and parking and/or access drives of 10 feet. As shown in the attached drawing EX3 on your agenda materials, indicated as VR4, is the area that the applicant is requesting this 10-foot variance. Staff is interpreting the entire service area behind Homegoods building should be considered in this request, which includes the entire length of the loading dock and better indicated in the drawing labeled EX3 VR4. The loading dock will be attached at an angle to the building, which is causing the conflict. The applicant has submitted a letter and attachments explaining the purpose of the request, indicating that the bulk regulations of the zoning ordinance are imposing the practical difficulties which are unusual difficulties, which are unusual to the property and that are not self-created. He feels that if granted, the variances will not be unduly detrimental to the other property in the vicinity. In addition, to satisfy the requirements of the zoning ordinance for granting of a bulk variance, the applicant feels in his letter that they have established the existence of practical difficulties such as the narrowness, shallowness, shape of topography of other conditions of the lot, which is extraordinarily difficult to comply with the general applicable bulk or other regulations of the zoning of the property. And in addition, the unusual characteristics of the property, such as unusual physical features compared to other property in the same zoning district. And the third is the condition that the property has not resulted from any deliberate action by the owner, which is it's not being self-created. The applicant is with us, and we'll be able to answer any questions you may have regarding this one.
Anything you'd like to add on this piece?
That was a mouthful. I don't know if I can add anything to that. This building, the Homegoods building, is being constructed similar to all the anchor tenant buildings in the entire shopping center. We have a loading dock for every tenant space as per their requirements. And the GDO regs have this requirement in them to separate from a, quote, parking lot and or driveway. And so the planning department thought we should ask for this variance in the event that, and I guess they deemed the back of house or that service area where the trucks come and service to be driveway. And so from an anchor tenant standpoint, we, typical in back of house, and this will be very similar to all the anchor tenants throughout the entire shopping center. They would typically have a dock, but it wouldn't be separated. It's actually attached to the building.
Thank you. Any questions for? Okay, this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Is anyone present wishing to speak for or against this portion of the application? If not, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for any further discussions or motion.
If there's no further discussion, then I move to approve Section 4 of this application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that application's been approved. Next item is staff reports and other business.
I don't have anything else.
All right, then we will stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Oh, that would have been better.